first time watching, welcome to Create Kids. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Today, I want to talk about who your neighbor is, which kind of sounds a little silly because you just think your neighbor is the person that lives next door to you, right? But Jesus said something different, and we're going to find out what exactly he said. The verse we're going to be reading is from Luke chapter 10, verse 36 and 37. It says, "Now, which of these three would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits?" Jesus asked. The man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Then Jesus said, "Yes, now go and do the same." So, like I said, when you think of your neighbor, you assume it's just the person that lives next door to you. Or maybe if you're in an apartment, it could be the person that lives above you or below you. But Jesus didn't really say that. So, on his way to Jerusalem, right before he died, he started teaching lots of people. He was like stopping in different cities, he was teaching, he was performing miracles. And one of the very first lessons he taught was what the most important commandment is. Now, he was sitting out with some other people, and there was this guy who was an expert in Jewish law. So he was supposed to know like all the rules, the do's and don'ts, what's right and wrong. And he wanted to try and trick Jesus one day into like maybe seeing if he didn't know everything that he was supposed to. So they're all sitting around, and this guy is like, "Hey, Jesus, if I want, or if someone in general wanted to get eternal life, what exactly do they need to do?" So basically, he was like, "If we want to go to heaven, what do we have to do?" So instead of answering, Jesus was like, "Well, I mean, what do you think the rules are?" Because in the back of his mind, he was probably like, "You're supposed to be an expert. You should know this stuff. So you tell me." So the guy responds and says that you should love God with all of your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and that you should also love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus was like, "Exactly. So why are you asking me these questions? You know what you're supposed to do, so just go do it." And the guy was like, "Well, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Who's my neighbor?" So instead of answering again, Jesus wasn't just like, well, it is blah, blah, blah. He was like, "I'm going to tell you a story." So he said he teaches this parable, and parables are just like stories that teach a lesson. So it's not necessarily real, but it's something that you can learn from. So he starts teaching this lesson or this parable, and he says that there was a Jewish man that was traveling, but he got attacked. So these guys like beat him up and took his clothes, and they just left him on the side of the road. Now remember, he's a Jewish man, okay? So the Jews were God's chosen people. They're the ones that he was rocking with back then, right? Before Jesus died, if you believed in God, you were Jewish because there were no Christians. Remember, Christians didn't come into play until after Jesus died. So this Jewish man, he gets beat up, and a priest comes by. And a priest would be like what the pastor of a church would be today. And he comes and sees this guy, and he's hurt and he's injured. And you would think that somebody that is like a pastor would be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to help him. He's injured." But the priest didn't do that. He was like, "Oh, he looks a little hurt. He's a little dirty. He's bloody and stuff. I don't want to touch him. I don't want to get dirty." So instead of helping him, he just crossed to the other side of the road and completely ignored him, acted like he didn't even see him. And he just kept it moving. So a little while later, a temple assistant came. So that would be someone who like works at the church, basically. Um, and this guy is like, "Ooh, I don't want to help him. He's looking a little rough and dusty." And he should have been someone that wanted to help him. Just like, if you go to church and you see people that are like passing out mints or helping you find your seat or whatever, like you would expect those type of people to be good people that would help someone in need, right? But this temple assistant didn't do that. He was like, "Ooh, not it today. I'm not doing it." So he kept it moving. He crossed to the other side of the street just like the priest did. And then a Samaritan came along. And now, Jews and Samaritans back then hated each other. Like they did not want to be friends. They didn't want to be around each other because Samaritans they were mixed between Jewish and Gentile are non-Christians. So basically, back then, Jews were only allowed to be with Jews, and if you weren't, you were wrong. And the Samaritans were wrong according to the Jews because they would be Jewish and non-Jewish mixing. Like husband and wife would be a Jew and a not Jew instead of a Jew and Jew. Okay? Got it? Makes sense? So they just had this long-standing hatred for each other. And the Samaritan should have been the one to be like, you got beat up, you're hurt, you don't got no clothes, and then keep it moving. But instead, he didn't. He's the one that saw this guy and was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you okay? So he takes some medicine that he had and he starts to like bandage up his wounds. He gives him like band-aids and wraps up all of his injuries. And then he puts him on his donkey and he takes him to an inn, which is like a hotel. And he stays the night with him to make sure he's okay. And then he tells the innkeeper or like the guy that worked in the hotel, he was like, hey, listen, this guy is staying here and I need you to look out for him. If the bill goes higher than what I've paid already, the next time I'm in town, I'll take care of the rest of it. Don't worry about it. I got you. But just look out for this guy because I can't really stay, but I want to make sure he's all right. So after Jesus tells this whole story, he's like, okay, so which one do you guys think is the neighbor to the Jewish man that was injured? And the expert in Jewish law was like, well, it was the Samaritan. He was the one that helped him. And Jesus was like, exactly. Now go and do the same. So when it comes to our neighbor, Jesus said that basically it's anyone that needs your help. It's not the person that lives next door to you. It's not the person that sits next to you in class. It's anybody that you see. It's not even just the people that you like. Your neighbor is anyone that needs you, that needs help, that is that they could be injured or whatever, having a rough day. Like say you're at school and this kid in another class is in the lunchroom and he is like crying at the lunch table. That's your neighbor. And you can go up to him and be like, hey, are you okay? And find out what's going on and help him. Like that's your neighbor. Or if you're playing at the park and someone falls off the swing and you don't know them, that's your neighbor. Go check on them. Hey, are you all right? Somebody's getting bullied. That's your neighbor. Your neighbor is anybody that might need you. So Jesus wants us to love on anybody that needs him because he is living inside of us, and that should be our job. Our job should be to love others the way we love ourselves. So if we were in a situation where we felt like we needed somebody or we were upset or we were sad or whatever, and we would want someone to treat us a certain way, that's how we have to treat others. Make sense? That's the lesson for today. So hopefully you guys will check back in next week to see what we're going to talk about.